Welcome to this deep dive where we're really going to get into Many Lives, Many Masters by Dr. Brian L. Weiss. It's a book that kind of throws you right into the world of past life regression therapy. And we're going to explore the experiences of Dr. Weiss, a psychiatrist, traditionally trained, and how his work with one patient just completely changed how he saw the human mind.
Yeah, and I think what makes this so interesting is, Dr. Weiss, he didn't start out expecting these mystical experiences. He was an Ivy League grad, published author in his field, believed in doing therapy by the book.
Right. He even thought like studying parapsychology, telepathy and all that was a little out there. So past lives, not exactly his thing. Right.
Hmm.
But then along comes Catherine, his patient, and everything changes.
Before Catherine comes into the picture, though, Dr. Weiss is at this kind of crossroads. He's really wrestling with this decision. Does he stick with psychiatry or does he move over to internal medicine? And a big part of this struggle comes from a really personal tragedy.
Of course, the loss of his infant son, Adam, an incredibly rare heart defect. It makes you think, a doctor trained at the best schools, and he's facing the limits of medicine head on with this kind of personal loss. It's got to shape how he sees things, even his career.
Oh, absolutely. He even talks about this in the book. This feeling of helplessness, despite all his medical training, really highlights how those personal experiences, the ones where we're dealing with loss and searching for meaning, well, they can really have a huge impact on what we believe.
It makes you wonder, if these experiences, maybe without him even realizing it, were kind of preparing him for what was going to happen with Catherine.
Catherine went to Dr. Weiss for help with some severe phobias and anxiety that had been affecting her life for years. And we're not just talking about everyday worries here. We're talking debilitating fears.
Yeah.
Fear of water, choking, the dark, even airplanes.
Imagine being so afraid that you feel like you have to sleep in your closet to feel safe. That's the level of anxiety Catherine was dealing with.
And it's important to mention that she had, tried to get help before. She even had surgery on her vocal cords for a benign nodule that they thought might be connected to her anxiety.
It's almost, well, ironic, isn't it? The surgery that's supposed to help with anxiety ends up making her even more afraid. Dr. Weiss, he describes how the anxiety she felt when she woke up in recovery, it was worse than anything she'd ever experienced before.
Really shows you just how deeply rooted these fears were. This wasn't just a case of nerves. These phobias were really ingrained in her. It was after this experience that Catherine was referred to Dr. Weiss by a pediatrician friend, Dr. Edward Poole.
And even that referral has this interesting layer to it, right? Edward was adamant. He was like, Dr. Weiss is the only one who will truly get Catherine and be able to help. Almost like he could sense this, well, profound journey they were both about to go on.
Definitely. It's these seemingly insignificant things that really add another dimension to the story, But even with this strong recommendation, Catherine, she doesn't make an appointment right away.
8 weeks went by, and we're talking about the head of a busy psychiatric unit. This is someone with a packed schedule. Dr. Weiss even admits that he, at first, overlooked her referral in the pile of paperwork.
But then, as he's clearing his desk, something really incredible happens.
It's like fate stepped in,
It really does feel that way, like he was being guided by some unseen force. He describes this urge to see Catherine that day that was so sudden, so strong. It wasn't about fitting her in. It was a need to see her.
It's like something was drawing them together, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. So he starts seeing Catherine, and for 18 months, it's traditional therapy. He's looking into her childhood, trying to find the root of these phobias, but nothing seems to be working. They weren't making much progress at all.
And that's when Dr. Weiss, kind of running out of options, desperate for a breakthrough, he decides to try something new, hypnosis. And as we'll see, that decision changed everything.
It was like opening a door to a place neither of them could have imagined.
So, under hypnosis, Catherine doesn't just uncover, repressed childhood memories. She starts describing past lives. And we're not talking about vague feelings here, but these super vivid, detailed experiences. They feel more real than any dream.
Can you imagine being Dr. Weiss in that room? This is a guy spent his whole career grounded in logic, in the scientific method, and suddenly his whole world is flipped upside down. He even admits that he started to wonder if he was losing it.
I bet. It's like a movie, right? Traditional psychiatrist, bam, confronted with reincarnation. So, these past lives, tell me more about what Catherine's describing.
So, one of the earliest past lives she talks about, and it's a powerful one, takes place way back around 1863 BC. She calls herself a Rhonda and describes living in this barren, sandy valley, water scarce, super precious. She talks about the routines of her life, carrying these heavy baskets to and from this marketplace, the scorching heat, the constant thirst.
It's incredible how she doesn't just describe what she sees. It's like she's using all her senses. You're right there with her, feeling how real it is.
Absolutely. And this makes what happens next even more intense. Catherine described this devastating flood that just engulfs her village. This raging wall of icy water wipes out everything in its path. She vividly remembers the terror she feels as she tries to save her baby, Cleestra, from this rising water.
Oh, wow. She even talks about tasting salt water, gasping for air as the water pulls her under. It's no wonder Dr. Weiss was questioning everything he thought he knew.
Yeah, and there's another layer to this. See, Catherine, she recognizes her present-day niece, Rachel, as her baby, Cleestra, from that lifetime.
Wow. So these aren't just like random separate lives. They're these connections, these threads back to her current life. That must have really gotten to Dr. Weiss.
It was a huge turning point. This detail on top of everything else made it almost impossible to brush these experiences off as just fantasy. It suggested this deeper connection, like consciousness just keeps going, even after death.
So it isn't just this one past life, is it? Catherine, she goes on to describe others, each one with these vivid details, these heavy emotions.
Exactly. She describes being Johann, this male soldier in 16th century Europe. He dies tragically on the battlefield. And then there's Louisa, a woman living in 18th century Spain, caught in the middle of this awful epidemic.
We were talking before about how real these memories felt to Catherine. Were there any common themes, anything that popped up in these different lives?
Definitely. Two big ones come to mind.
Yeah.
Water and illness. Think about Aranda, her fear of the flood, her desperate fight to save her child from drowning, and then there's Louisa, right, battling this horrific epidemic.
And when you think about Catherine's phobias now, the fear of water, the anxiety that led to her vocal cord surgery, it makes you wonder if these past life traumas are somehow, I don't know, manifesting in her life now.
It's a question that Dr. Weiss keeps coming back to in the book. He's a scientist, right?
Yeah.
Logic, evidence, that's his thing. Yet here he is face to face with these powerful emotional experiences that challenge everything he believes in.
Must have been a real struggle for him, his logical side battling with what he was seeing with his own eyes.
Totally. He even says he considered every psychiatric diagnosis in the book: schizophrenia, multiple personality disorder, you name it. But nothing quite fit. The details were too specific, the emotions too real. He realized he had to look outside the box, outside traditional psychiatry, to understand what was going on.
So what did he do? Did he look for answers elsewhere?
He did. He started researching reincarnation, past life regression, anything that could shed some light on what he was seeing. That's when he came across the work of Dr. Ian Stevenson.
For those who don't know, Dr. Stevenson was a big-time psychiatrist at the University of Virginia. Spent his career studying children who claimed to remember their past lives.
That's right. Stevenson focused on these kids who would just spontaneously start talking about past lives, often giving really specific details that could actually be verified. Some kids even showed this thing called xenoglossy.
Xenoglossy, that's where you can speak a language you've never learned in this life, right?
Exactly. These cases, along with all the research on near-death experiences, it started to wear down Dr. Weiss's skepticism. He started to realize that there was this whole other way of looking at consciousness, at reality, that he'd never even considered.
It's amazing how something so outside our everyday experience can force us to expand how we see things, to question what we think we know. But Catherine's journey, it goes even deeper than just recalling past lives. This is where we get into, well, the masters.
Yes, the masters, these wise beings who exist in another dimension. But before we get into that, I think it's important to think about how all of this was hitting Dr. Weiss. Here's this scientist, confronted with information that seems impossible, yet feels undeniably real.
That's a good point. We've been focused on Catherine's journey, but we need to remember how all this was impacting Dr. Weiss. His journey, his internal struggle to make sense of what he's witnessing, it's just as captivating.
Oh, absolutely. And it's this struggle that makes the story so relatable. It makes you think, It's for anyone who's ever questioned the nature of reality, anyone who's wrestled with the unknown.
So we left off with Dr. Weiss kind of at this crossroads, struggling with these wild experiences that just turn his whole understanding of the world upside down.
Yeah, and that's where these masters come in. During one of Catherine's hypnosis sessions, things change. Her voice, it gets deeper, like way more authoritative, and she starts channeling information from these, well, highly evolved spiritual beings. It's like they're talking right through her, sharing their guidance and wisdom, but from this whole other realm,
That's a lot to take in. We're talking about a psychiatrist trained in the traditional way, suddenly thrown into this world of channeling and spiritual entities. What were these messages like?
At first, they were pretty startling. The master started revealing these incredibly specific things about Dr. Weiss's life, things Catherine couldn't have possibly known, like his father's Hebrew name, the details of his son's heart condition, even those internal debates he had about specializing in psychiatry versus internal medicine.
Wow. So picture this. Dr. Weiss, just sitting there listening to these incredibly personal truths being revealed by someone who, at least according to his understanding of the world, shouldn't have this information. No wonder he describes it as this deafening cascade of hidden, secret truths.
It was a turning point for him. He had built his entire career on logic, on evidence, and here he is having this undeniable experience that just throws everything he thought he knew out the window. It's a big moment, not just for him, but for the whole book, really. Makes us, the readers, confront our own ideas about what's real.
Absolutely. I think it's around here in the book, even the biggest skeptic has to stop and think, what if there's more to life, to consciousness than we realize? But these messages from the masters, they go beyond just revealing personal details, don't they? They start sharing these really profound insights about life, death, reality itself.
Exactly. One of the key things they emphasize is that we're not just physical beings having this human experience. We're spiritual beings having this human experience. It's a small difference, but so important.
Right, like we've been looking at the world through this tiny peephole, and the masters are saying, hey, open your eyes, there's a bigger picture. They're pushing us to see that who we are, our true selves, goes way beyond our physical bodies.
And with this bigger view comes this incredible peace, less fear, especially the fear of death. When we understand that death isn't the end, just a transition, it's not as scary.
Like, they're giving us a map to navigate this whole human experience, helping us see that the struggles, the pain, it's all part of something much bigger. But it's not all, like, heady spiritual stuff. The masters, they get practical too, right? I mean, they really stress how important balance and harmony are in life.
Oh, absolutely. They talk about living in sync with nature, respecting our physical and emotional well-being.
Mm.
They even suggest that a lot of the bad stuff we see, like greed, violence, even how we treat the environment, it comes from being disconnected from our true spiritual selves.
Kind of a tough pill to swallow, but it makes you think, especially looking at the world today. There's this sense of urgency in their message. Like, they're saying, hey, wake up. We need to rethink our priorities, find a better way to live. But there's also this really strong message of hope, isn't there? Like with forgiveness.
Forgiveness, yeah, it's crucial. The masters are big on this. They say that holding on to anger, resentment, whether it's from this life or past lives, it just weighs us down, keeps us stuck.
And we see this so clearly with Catherine. Remember that traumatic experience she described from her childhood? The assault by her father when she was only 3.
Right, and it's through these past life regressions that she starts to understand her father, not just as her abuser, but as someone who was hurting too, caught in his own patterns.
It's like this amazing example of how when we see how interconnected our lives are, how our past shapes our present, that's where healing and forgiveness can begin.
And it really drives home the point that true forgiveness isn't about saying what happened was okay. It's about seeing the humanity in everyone, even those who've hurt us. It's about letting go of that anger and choosing compassion for ourselves and for them.
Such a powerful message. It's something that really hits home, even if you're not sure about past lives or any of that. It's about the power of empathy, of understanding, to heal old wounds and move forward. So as we wrap up our deep dive into many lives, many masters, what are some of the biggest takeaways for our listeners? How can we apply these ideas regardless of what we believe?
I think the biggest thing is to just stay open, to be curious about the possibility that there's more to life than what we see.
Dr. Weiss, his willingness to challenge his own beliefs, to step into the unknown, it reminds us that growth happens when we get outside our comfort zones.
It's about saying yes to curiosity, right? Approaching life like this grand adventure, always learning, always questioning, even if it means letting go of some of our old beliefs along the way. Exactly. And as we explore, it's important to look inward too. The masters talk about really understanding our fears, our patterns, asking ourselves, what am I here to learn? What patterns am I repeating?
Taking responsibility for our actions, recognizing that we get to choose how we react to things. We're not just along for the ride, we're the ones holding the steering wheel.
That's it. And don't forget, none of us are on this journey alone. Catherine had Dr. Weiss, she had the masters. We've all got people we can lean on, whether it's family, friends, mentors, even connecting with something larger than ourselves.
It's a good reminder that we are all connected, part of something bigger than we can imagine. And maybe, just maybe, when we're curious, when we're looking inward, when we feel that connection, that's when we can really start to tap into that wisdom, that guidance that's always there for us if we just open ourselves up to it. Many lives, many masters takes us on this incredible journey of exploration, leaving us with more questions than answers, but ultimately urging us to see life with this renewed sense of wonder,
Yeah,
with a deeper understanding of our place in it all. It's been a fascinating deep dive, wouldn't you say?
I completely agree. Hopefully this will encourage everyone listening to keep searching, keep questioning, and keep embracing the mystery that's at the heart of being human.